Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to see Carlisle win away. Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Dan McLennan.
No, you weren't dreaming. Not only did United win a game, but they scored twice and kept a clean sheet. On this week's episode, we look back on a vital win over Stevenage and preview this weekend's clash with a Bradford City side struggling for form at Brunton Park.
There's a kneel with a pass so true to Boulder Stone and Clark's in view. There's a cross and a run.
I went through that about 100 miles an hour to fit it in. I put a bit more in than normal because I wanted to get that bit in at the start. Oh, that was a good feeling last weekend, wasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, some of us expected a win.
Some of us weren't quite as confident, I think it's fair to say.
No, if ever there was a game that we had to win, it was last Saturday. You know, they're just getting used to a new manager in Tisdale, and you know he hasn't had much time to get to work, and
yeah.
I think Keith Millen's just 3 or 4 weeks ahead of him in terms of what he's trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we'll touch on the Stevenage game. We're not going to cover it in as much detail as normal because none of us went to the game. None of us really listened. I didn't listen to the radio because I was actually out having a meal at that time, so unfortunately wasn't able to follow it as closely as planned.
Meal on a Saturday afternoon? That's a random time for a meal.
Yeah, well, the meal was at 4 o'clock? I can't remember now. It was 4 o'clock. Went for a walk in Delamere Forest, basically this big light show thing on for Christmas. So went for a nice pub lunch in Cheshire. Very, very middle class behaviour.
I was going to say, very middle class. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, let's get on to the news, Dan, because that's the bit where we're going to cover in a bit of detail this week. Because there's one little bit that's emerged this week, but then there was one bit last week that emerged after we released the episode that was pretty big news, I think it's fair to say. So first up, the bit that emerged this week, that's obviously the news about the capacity at Brunton Park. It's been temporarily reduced. So yeah, United have basically announced plans to change the capacity at Brunton Park. That means there'll be no need to bring in Plan B COVID-19 regulations for home fixtures as long as those plans are in place. So the capacity has been reduced from about 18,000, I think it was previously, Dan. I can't remember.
Give or take 1,500 folk, yeah.
Yeah, and it's gone down to 9,999, which is one below the trigger for Plan B. That's going to be split into 3,999 terracing and 6,000 seating. There'll be no need for COVID-19 vaccine or testification to be shown. Mandatory face coverings for indoor settings do not extend to the hospitality and bar settings at the club. Hence, face coverings in Foxes, the hospitality boxes, lounges, and the West Stand bars are not mandatory, but they are in the East Stand concourse, despite the fact that that's well ventilated because it's open at either end. That's the logic of it, but there you go. Yeah. So yeah, basically no plans for being able to have... I mean, to be honest, this is a logistical decision, isn't it, by the club? Because we've seen this season what a shambles it's been at times with normal tickets.
Yeah, it's a sensible operational decision. You know, we're out the cups, so there's no potential big third or fourth round games on the horizon. The Pizza Trophy certainly isn't going to get big crowds. And even if you look at the two big home games we've got coming up, you know, Bradford are usually well supported, but given the league position to both, it's still probably only be...
And it's pre-Christmas, isn't it? When it's always a smaller crowd for that game.
Yeah. And even with Rochdale on Boxing Day, you know, I mean, they might bring a few up, but even with the usual sort of holiday increase you get on Boxing Day, you're still probably only going to have, 5,000, maybe 6,000 at a push.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just saves a lot of paperwork, a lot of hassle, and it's common sense, you know.
Yeah, I mean, as Greg pointed out, our good friend Greg Bullman pointed out that this season there's been 2 or 3 times when going in, the scanners have failed, even for the QR codes for tickets. So, you know, it saves them doing that, you know, potential queues, and also saves them the time that they're going to have to spend checking for tennis balls in people's pockets as well before the games. So there you go. But yeah, it's attracted a few interesting people on Twitter saying that suddenly Carlisle's their second team who clearly haven't looked into the details of it. One of which is former Premier League footballer and goal scorer extraordinaire Matt Le Tissier. But yeah, probably best we move on from that quickly.
Yeah, one of the Sport for All account, I think it was, wasn't it? Retweeted the news. I think it's been liked 35,000 times, and a lot of anti-vax conspirators have now joked that they're adopting Carlisle. The irony is, if they all came to the match,
we'd have to adopt.
We'd have to adopt these rules. So
that's the irony.
But it's a bit of publicity and a bit of good light for a change. So.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's move on to the main bit of news then, Dan. It's been dragging on for a while, this one, but finally, the takeover / succession / investment, whatever bollocks you want to call it, the saga of that is over. For now.
I don't class it as over until we don't owe a penny till Purepay / EWM personally.
Oh, well, that's one of the talking points we've got down here, isn't it? But, so basically, it was confirmed by the club in his statement on the official website last Friday that the talks of our lender, Purepay, formerly EWM, have ended, with no resolution to the issues that had blocked the deal, with some pointed references, I think it's fair to say, to CUOSC thrown in by the club, bringing the ownership issue back to square one. CUOSC responded with their own statement explaining their reasoning too. And it's just left fans trying to work out, one, what the hell is going on, two, where do we go from here? That's where we are, isn't it, Dan? Yeah,
basically. We haven't been told enough. There's been a lot of back-end dealings. CUOSC especially, it appears that the top board have made the decisions without going to the members, which I understand they have the right to do so. But
doesn't look great, though.
You would imagine that something as serious as potential dilution of their share should be taken to the membership. You know, there's stuff will come out over the weeks about this, I've no doubt. You know, I mean, fans have already started firing questions into the relevant parties, and I'm sure we will get a few more answers over time. But what a great early Christmas present, isn't it? Typical Carlisle United.
So yeah, I've got a few discussion points I've picked out here, Dan, for us to go through on this one. I mean, the first thing from the two statements is it's good that I suppose we've had some sort of resolution, but there's still not enough detail on this, is there? When you go through, I mean, the club and CUOSC, and I guess EWM and Purepay need to be honest about what the actual issues that held up the deal were. Because without that, you can't really judge either way about this, can you? It's a really tough one for your average fan to look at and think, well, what does this all mean? All I know is that it means it looks like EWM and Purepay are not taking over, but why has it happened? What are the issues? And how do we avoid them happening in future?
Given that EWM / Purepay have been silent from day one, I don't think we're ever going to find out what the issues were. We as fans can join the dots and make semi-educated guesses. The club may reveal some, but whilst we owe approximately $2.5 million to them, I doubt they will come out all guns blazing over it, because we wouldn't want to be in a situation where that needed to be paid quite quickly and affected us. So
it goes back to the issue, the fact that they've tied themselves in knots with this deal with the EWM / Purepay, and the thing is, they looked at it and thought, well, this is better than going to a bank. Because if a bank's there, they're going to be demanding money go back every now and then. Whereas EWM Purepay have got this, maybe a slight bit of interest in it, but they're not saying, we want that money back now, are they? They're quite happy for it to sit there for now, obviously. So that's...
Yeah.
It's a tough one. So yeah, I mean, there's a feeling from some fans, isn't there, that it was a bit of a bullet dodged. Probably, as you mentioned, due to the fact that we haven't really heard anything. It's been silence from EWM and Purepay, which is obviously their right to go about doing stuff that way. But the problem is we don't have a clue what the new ownership setup would look like. So we don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It could be in a good setup for all we know. So this is why we're very much in the dark.
I can fully understand why they haven't commented, because you often find with takeovers, companies don't like to make comments until a deal's done. But football, although business, operates a little bit different. Football lives off rumours and, gossip, and there's literally been nothing from their end. Well, I mean...
You go to, I'm thinking of Wrexham, when they were taken over by Reynolds and McKinley. They spoke to their sports trust. There was a bit of silence and a bit of rumours at the start, and then suddenly it came out and they started saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we've got plans for. Whereas with this, we were just sort of kept in the dark. It's like, oh, we know better. That was the feeling that's the feeling fans take from it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a mess, isn't it? You know, it's only at Carlisle United could so little words create so much mess, because, I mean, we've got currently John Jackson, who's part of the EWM Purepay setup, on our board. Does he step back from that now? Does he stay until they've got every last penny back?
I mean, it would make sense if they're running a setup where they're not demanding we pay it back urgently, but they want to keep an eye and make sure we're not throwing money away for the sake of it when we could be paying a bit back. I think it does make sense that he would stay there, probably.
It's also none of his business either, because we're a professional sports club and sometimes money has to go suddenly places.
True, but he may take... That's where he's got to make a judgment, isn't he? He's got to look and say, well, actually, I can understand they're in danger of going out of the league, which means they'd get less money, so it makes sense they're going to have to spend a bit of money to keep themselves in the league, so that they're in a situation where they definitely can't pay us back any money. That's the way he's probably looking at it. CUOSC. So at first, when the club statement first came out, they came out very much as almost the bad guys, didn't they?
Yeah.
They countered back
very quickly as well. So they obviously, because they're part of the obviously knew a statement would be going out, so they had time to prepare their counter statement.
I do wonder if they were almost waited for the club's one to come out, so they probably had theirs more or less ready, but added bits in.
Definitely.
To counter what was said. Because the suggestion from the club statement essentially is that CUOSC were the ones who put the block on it when EWM Purepay wanted to change the takeover slightly last year. And as a result, there'd been no resolution to that, so that's it. There's no way of going forward. CUOSC have sort of slightly disagreed with that, I think it's fair to say, would you say?
Yeah. CUOSC's biggest problem has been their lack of conversation with, first and foremost, their members, who number, 450?
Yeah.
And also, as a shareholder, to the wider fan base. You know, I mean... completely no problem if they tell their members first, because that's what they should do.
Yeah.
But when you read into it, I'm looking at the CUOSC statement here. They say, we need to make it clear at no time were we asked to give up any shares. We were asked to agree to allow the B non-voting shares to be turned into A voting shares. These B shares were when... Andrew Jenkins and John Nixon, etc., converted debt for non-voting shares. If that had happened, it would have meant that the total number of shares held by CUOSC would have been just under 10%. And they say, we agreed this subject to a full change of control. Now, when they say we agreed this, that's their board agreeing this. Because there's certainly never been a fan vote on do we agree to this. So, and like I said earlier, yes, they do have a thing where the board can make decisions, etc.
But something as big as that,
for something as big as that to not go to the members is bordering on criminal for me.
Yeah, it's worrying, and they've got to ask questions of themselves going forward as well. As you mentioned, there 450 members odd. Our average gates are 4,500. Add on to that probably 2,000 or 3,000 exiles who maybe aren't able to get to games regularly, but will go to the away games every now and then and stuff like that. They're still fans. They still have a voice in it. You know, the argument that they maybe only represent about 5% of the realistic fan base of the club.
Well, you're talking roughly, as you say, about 10% of an average attendance. But when you chuck in the likes of shift work and people who can only attend, you know, maybe once a month, or, you know, and not everyone attends every game at the same time, you probably, like you say, you probably are looking at 5, 6, 7%. You know, it's quite poor especially when you look at clubs like Exeter, where everyone's a member.
3,000 or 4,000 at Exeter.
You know.
Obviously, not everyone's going to want to join something like that. That's fine, but
no.
You should be aiming to get at least pushing on 30-40% of your fan base signed up. Something like this. Yeah. Really is what you should be aiming for.
There should certainly be no reason why we don't have 1,000 members of our trust. considering that they own a share of the club.
And then you go back to the issue. When you go to the AGM, only 40 people voting, isn't it? 40, 50 people voting max?
Yeah.
That's not great. that really isn't great at all. But there you go. That's certainly a different issue altogether, isn't it? I mean, just one more thing on them. It's like, what's the point of them having this agreed to confidentiality, etc.? They've got the blocking power at the club. They've got the blocking power in terms of takeovers. They're the ones with the power here, so they can turn around and say, no, we will go to talk to you about potentially diluting our thing or doing this and that, but you've got to speak a bit more to the fans about exactly what your plans are for them. That has to be and they've got to be brave, and they've got to. It's like sometimes they enjoy being there in the boardroom, and they like rolling on the backs and having the bellies tickled. That's the feeling you get from watching it. I'm sure that some people in there have got strong views on the setup of Carlisle United, but they're not showing it.
Don't get me wrong. Some of the legalities surrounding a takeover are obviously have to be confidential for a certain time and that. But something as serious as a dilution without taking it to your members, that's almost an abuse of power.
That they can make it a condition to whoever's taken over, saying you've got to speak to the fans and explain exactly what your plans are for this club. Because to be honest, what they were planning on doing, if it happened, EWM or Purepay or whatever would have taken over, and we would have had no idea exactly what their plans for the club were. They could have come in and said, well, actually, we're going to run it in an even tighter budget than the current owners are, and we're basically going to strip it back, essentially. That's what they could have done.
Basically, they need to grow some.
Yeah, grow a pair of balls and basically say to the next time there's one of these comes up, okay, you've got to speak to the fans and explain exactly what your plans are.
Because if you don't, we will.
Yeah. Or basically say, if you don't, then we refuse to get ourselves involved in this takeover.
Yeah.
And if the club
tell the fans why.
And if the club say, the CUOSC are blocking it, they can turn around and say, well, we're not blocking it. We're only blocking it because they won't tell us what the plans are. And that's common sense. That's where they need to really. It's frustrating. It really frustrates me because other clubs would bite their hands off for the setup, the ownership shares they've got. They really would, and they've wasted such an opportunity over the last how many years they've had it now? Maybe 15 years, something like that. They've had the shares, maybe a little bit longer. They've had so many opportunities. They've had opportunities to do fundraising for the club, and you see their accounts, what they've got in their accounts, sometimes for like 10 grand or something in there. You look at Exeter loaning 2 million to their club. Obviously, it's complicated the way the money works and all stuff like that, but they've got a set up there where they own their club and they're doing all that. And if it feels like there needs to be some asses kicked basically and got into shape. That's what it feels like there. But there you go. Well, let's move on to the club now, Dan. For me, they've once again, and it just feels like we're on repeat with this, they've shown themselves completely incapable or woefully incapable, I think it's fair to say, of getting a takeover or investment sorted at the club. How many times did they fail miserably with this? And they all say, we've got to be cautious, we've got to make sure it's the right people. I said, it'd be funny, but plenty of other clubs have done it. I'd ask questions about the fact that this EWM Purepay thing has dragged on for 3 years now, something like that, okay? Right? Maybe just 2 years, okay?
Yeah.
So in that time, Wrexham I hate to bring it back to them, but Wrexham got taken over by those two American film stars, TV stars, right? There's an article on The Athletic, you can read it, by one of the guys who helped support them, who's an English bloke who's a football fan, who said that they went around looking at potential League One and League Two clubs as well, because they were advised you're much better off buying a League One or League Two club because it's much easier when you're already in the EFL than it is to get yourself out of the National League. Have we missed an opportunity there, maybe? Because we've been so steadfastly obsessed with getting EWM through the door as owners?
Possibly.
There's got to be big questions about what they've actually done over the last few years.
Every few months there's talk of groups looking for clubs with potential, and our name never pops up in it, and it really annoys me because we're probably one of the teams in League 1 and 2 with the most potential, because yes, we're Carlisle United, but we represent half the county in southwest Scotland and heading towards Northumberland. We're like a smaller scale version of Norwich, I always think, in that
there's no club nearby.
Yeah, but I know they've got Ipswich further along, but people come in to watch. You often Cockermouth originally. We all know folk from out west, Penrith, Kendal, Appleby,
People have found
Gretna, Annan, Dumfries. I know people from Brampton, Holtwhistle, you know, I mean, there's a big, big draw, and we do not shout about this enough when it comes to this. And with the greatest respect to our board of directors, Andrew Jenkins is in his mid-80s.
Yeah.
Steve Pat wears tank tops. And John Nixon's too busy on his little cushy FA numbers. So.
I was hoping with Steve Pat you were going to mention shares and memes of dogs with ham on their face on Facebook. But,
I'm sick of sharing that one, it's that funny. But, you know, I mean, with the greatest of respect to them, they're not the most active of sellers, are they? You know, there's no get up and go there, is there?
No.
You know, I mean, should they be instructing Nigel Clibbin, the Chief Executive, to prepare a document and advertise to us, selling us, you know? I mean, we know Nigel loves the document. I'm pretty sure he could knock up, you know, an article, you know, get a map of Cumbria, South West Scotland, and I'll draw a circle for you where people come and add up how many people live in there. Yeah, not everyone likes football, but if half of them people like, there's probably a captive audience of 250,000 people for this football club. The potential's massive.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Dan, and that's what we're passionate about. This, aren't we? The fact that as a club, we look when people say put the club up for sale. I think some people are a bit naive and say as if we just put an advert in the newspaper. That's not what we think.
Start.
It would be a start, but then it's a little bit gimmicky. And it looks, to be honest, it doesn't look very professional.
No.
I wouldn't think.
There's industry publications where you can do that sort of thing.
True, but for me, I think you're right.
Football Business Magazine. Why not put an advert in there?
In terms of the document, as you say, a brochure or something like that basically sells the company and says, this is why we're a club that could really go places. You know, there's potential for investment here. What maybe some of them does clearly highlight the issues we're facing, the fact that we actually do need some work done to the ground, but there's an opportunity to build something really, really good.
That's the understatement of the year.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? So, but yeah, you're right. That I think they need maybe something like that to do a brochure, or they need maybe get some outside help. I don't know how you go about doing that. You do have to be careful because there are. I mean, we've seen what happened with Rochdale this summer, where basically there was a hostile attempt at a takeover there by people who, quite frankly, I would not want anywhere near Carl United. So I don't blame the Rochdale fans and the Slayers for trying to stop them because they've been involved in clubs in the past who, basically Google what happened with Rochdale takeover is what I advise them because that was very close to being a disaster for them, but their fans did a brilliant job.
You want to avoid getting people like Yaya Kurdi involved. But I mean, once the fan base worked out his name, a 30-second Google search showed up what he was. You're telling me nobody at that club's got Google?
No one looked at him and thought, this bloke does not have the money he claims he has. This is nonsense. Let's take a step back. That's why I do worry sometimes if there's certain agents who maybe have influence over people. I don't know, and they take their advice a bit too seriously when they should really take a step back.
We all know where all that came from and the various links.
Let's probably best to leave that there, isn't it? I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing up here, Dan. I mean, actually, one more thing on the club that I've got to say. Sorting out the debt's got to be the priority next. That really has to be the next main aim for the club because that is the thing that's going to happen. There needs to be some sort of agreement with EDBM. I'm not being funny, but if Fred Story can manage to find a way to write off £1.2 million of debt to us, I'm pretty sure that what's his name, Philip Day can work his magic with his accountants and find a way to do something similar. That's what you'd hope.
I think the problem we have there, and I'm certainly no expert for anyone. No. You know, we're not experts in finance, but Purepay aren't a massive company at the moment. Yeah, they're basically a bit of a shell and just beginning out. So for them to write off such a debt so early in their life would be difficult. But there likely is ways and means. I mean, ideally, say it's at 2.5 million, then the club just say, right, 10 years we'll give you, stop the interest on it because it'll kill us. 10 years you can have $250,000 a year and we'll just get on with it. Yeah, it'll affect our budget sometimes, but
it's one of those
we need to get rid of it, don't we?
Ideally, if they could help us by just writing off somehow, that would be the best way of happening. Or we basically just need to wait for Dean Henderson to get sold, which seems to be the plan of the club at the moment, doesn't it? A couple more points before we move on to talk about the Stevenage game finally. Let's talk about the elephant in the room then, Dan. Mr. Holdsworth. So if the planned takeover with Purepay EWM is off, what's the need for David Holdsworth to still be employed by the club in the director of football role?
Well, as regular listeners will know, I'm an advocate of a director of football role. I think in the modern game it's essential. And as regular listeners will also know, we're probably in agreement that on performance, David Holdsworth possibly isn't that man.
And for what he claims
and
to
we're
do,
being very polite and fair here.
Yeah.
Does it get to a point where at the end of this season we say, thanks very much, off you go. Let's advertise it properly and get a proper man in?
Or get someone in who maybe has some connections with the club in the past who would be good for that role. So a name that we've both suggested in the past would be good at it. Greg Abbott.
Get someone in who has some connections at football clubs. That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Just in general.
We all know Greg's got hundreds of contacts, hasn't he, from when his time with his manager. But yeah, I mean, that's off to another point there. I mean, we all know exactly why he's putting that role in by who, don't we?
Yeah.
So they've not got that same connection anymore. They're literally just the lender now. They're not the potential future owner, right? For me, like I said, we should be working towards him leaving the role at the end of the season at the very least. I don't think he's up to it. I don't think he's any good. I don't want to see him banging on about these fantastic new kits we've got from Maria, which are actually shit. That's not that's not a director of football's role. It's for me. Like I said, I just want someone in the role who's actually any good at it. I think we should definitely stick with the role. We should have someone in who's got the long-term aim of setting out a plan for the club.
A proper director of football would obviously oversee the contract negotiation. The way it should work is the head coach picks the targets, and then he meets them, but the director of football does the haggling with the agent and
working with the chief executive together. Yeah.
But also the director of football should also be working with the youth team and the academy to sort the pathway. I don't know. I couldn't honestly sit here and say how much involvement David Holdsworth has with that side of it. I would hazard a guess it's nowhere near what it should be. If it is, I'll apologise instantly. But
I mean, bangs on about Lewis Bell being so great, and yet what opportunities has he got at the moment? There's an example for you.
If Lewis Bell is as good as I say he is, he should be playing first team football now.
Yeah,
and that's not me being harsh at Lewis Bell.
Exactly, we've said this before.
It's not his fault. He's been bandied about so much, and also we know he had COVID really bad and it really hit him. But there comes a time with some of these young players where if they're that good, they should be playing because Kyle Dempsey did, Brad Potts did. Matt Jansen did, Rory Delap did,
Jared Bradford did,
and it's
all right. Sam Fishburne is no.
Yeah, Taylor Charters, Sam Fishburne. It's all right saying, we want 750 grand for this player. Get him on the pitch playing, putting in 7 and 8 out of 10 every week, and your 750 will become 1.5 million very quickly.
Yeah. That's what you'd think, but there you go.
But,
Anyway, we could talk about him and the issues of that all day, but we probably need to move on quickly before we get into Stevenage. But this is more like an open question to our fans, and we'll basically put something out on Twitter and social media about this. What do our fans actually want from a takeover? That's a big question that we need to have a look at going forward, because we've got to be realistic here. Whoever comes in will inherit all the same issues: dilapidated ground, geography working against us.
Here's a thought for you. The 8th of January, we're not going to have a game, are we? Yeah. And we have said in previous episodes we will maybe do a bit of a special on the state of the club and that. So if we get these Christmas and New Year fixtures out of the way, we will ask the question prior to recording for that weekend. And you can all give us your views and we'll read as many out as we can.
Yeah.
And then it saves just me, you and Mike just talking non-stop as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the plan. So we'll do that probably just after Christmas. We'll get you to send in all your questions, and we'll have a little discussion through some of those as well. Let's move on to the match review then, Dan.
Oh, sorry, one bit of news that has just come through as we're recording on Wednesday here. We've sold out our initial allocation for Salford.
Yeah. Brilliant.
The 1100 terracing got reduced to 750 for some reason. So we've sold 750 terracing and 216 seats, and the club are just waiting to hear if we'll get the other 350 terracing. I see no reason why not, because Salford get about 1500 at home.
Yeah.
And they're just losing money themselves if they don't sell them.
Yeah.
But it'll be good to see a good travelling support.
Definitely. All right, then, Dan, let's do the match review of the Stevenage game. We'll try and keep this a bit tighter than usual because, like I said, none of us watched it. United 2, Stevenage 0. Yeah, it's quite hard to believe, but United have won a game away from home. And not only that, they've done so by scoring 2 goals. What a Christmas treat this was. It's now 6 points from a possible 9 for Keith Millen's boys. I mean, you're looking at it now, was the Mansfield result a bit of a blip, or is it too early to tell? A bit of context there. Mansfield are actually top of the form table right now, so when you look at it, it's probably a narrow 1-0 defeat there. It's not the worst result in the world, is it, actually?
And you could argue that we deserved a draw on the second half at Mansfield.
Yeah, there's this argument for that. All we know is that it was a massive win for the lads. Not only gets us points on board, but it drags Stevenage back into the battle to avoid the drop as well. And that's important. Getting more teams involved in that makes it more of a scrap and gives us a better chance of actually getting out there as well. Some of the talking points, I mean, I said there, you can't underestimate how big a result this could be. Millen said in midweek that it wasn't a 6-pointer, but he did actually have to admit after the game, didn't he, that it was a massive game and effectively a 6-pointer. So he seemed very pleased with that. How important do you reckon it is, Dan? Not just in terms of points, but a sort of psychological thing, getting one over one of the teams near us in the table?
Oh, it's massive. You know, it's and also away from home as well. You know, it reminds them that they can win away from home, etc. You know, and with the fixtures we've got coming up, you know, we're playing teams shortly that Bradford are 14th. Rochdale are 18th, Salford are 17th, and Scunthorpe are 24th. What's to be scared from them 4 games?
No, big
opportunity. You know, maybe they'll look at it and think, well, we can beat these teams. They're no better than us.
Yeah, and if you look a little bit further ahead as well, you've got Crawley, I think, is the next game, isn't it? And you know, they're a team that, you know, when they come to Brunton Park generally struggle, don't they? So. Yeah, and there's a 2-week break before that, so that's a chance for us to, you know, get a bit of a time on the training ground as well to work on things.
Hopefully, get some new faces in.
Yeah, that's the hope. In terms of the team selection for this game, Dan, we've talked about it in jest for months, haven't we? So we can take the credit for this. But Jon Mellish was finally used as a striker, and yeah, he seemed to do okay. Obviously, he's finding his feet a bit, but I mean, his physical presence made a difference, didn't it? And quite brave of Keith Millen to play him with Sam Fishburne as well. He could have, you know, put Abrahams up there as a bit of, you know, slightly more experienced head. But he went with that decision to play the lad who's not played there before and a young striker, didn't he?
Yeah. One thing we all know we get with Mellish is he won't stop running. He's a nuisance. He's never going to be the tidiest player. He's more brawn than beauty when it comes to the game, but
those players are useful at League 2 level.
Yeah, they can be. You know, it was like a low league version of you know, Chris Sutton or Paul Warhurst, wasn't it? You know, it's that's obviously Paul Warhurst, not at Carlisle, because we can't forgive his 23 minutes cameo at Macclesfield. But no, it's you know, it worked, and maybe a couple of our other strikers should be looking, thinking, bloody hell, showing us up a bit.
Well, that's a point I put further on for us to discuss there. Well, we might as well say it now. If you're Abrahams and Young, do you maybe look at that and think, oh, Christ, he's using a midfielder converted from centre-back now as a striker instead of us? And a kid, basically, who's not, you know, just making his way. little bit of a wake-up call for them. I know Millen was at pains after the game to say it wasn't a reflection on those two. He just felt for this specific game we needed a bit of physicality up there, and it made sense to try Jon maybe in that role because we aren't getting the best out of him in midfield.
Yeah.
But he still must be something at the back of their head saying, we're not getting a start now ahead of these two.
Yeah.
You'd hope at least that would give him a wake-up call.
You would hope so. But,
yep. Well, let's talk about the goals then quickly. First goal, a bit more of the guy of last season. Great little clip delivery into the box from the free kick. A thundering header from Mellor that the keeper palmed onto the bar. And, I mean, it pretty much bounces off Mellish into the net, and a few people sort of mocking it in that way. But you've got to be in the right place at the right time, haven't you?
He's in the right place, so you can't knock him for that, you know.
It's one of those ones playing as a striker now. He wasn't a case for him of, I've got to think about where I'm going to get back to defending in a minute. He's basically just in there doing his job as a striker. And that's maybe helped him a little bit to get more into that deeper position into the box, possibly. So, got to be in the right place, right time, and great to see from Jon. Goal number 2, it's a great bit of wing play by Gibson, isn't it? To nip in, take the ball off one defender, beat a couple more, and then get poleaxed, basically. But the defender injured himself, didn't he, in the process of bringing him down in the box. Nice to see a bit of confidence from him as well. Just grab the ball straight away, saying, I'm taking this.
Well, yeah, he's playing with confidence, isn't he? You know, he's probably been our best player recently.
Yeah.
He obviously feels he's playing well, and he's grabbed the ball. I mean, you look, he's scored 4 goals since mid-November. So let him take them if he's happy taking them. Happy days.
Brilliant. I mean, there was a ridiculous amount of time between the actual penalty being awarded and being taken. And there was an injury, but even when Gibson had, got the ball on the spot, he took about a minute to actually sort out the area and get everyone ready. And really cool. Just waiting for the keeper to move and slot it into the other side. And that was it. Got to give a bit of a case for the defence in this game. I mean, that's 6 clean sheets in 21 games now, which is not a bad return from a side that's sort of struggling near the bottom of the table.
And a side that's had a couple of hammerings at the likes of Sutton and Northampton.
I think that's what makes our defensive record look a bit worse, really. When you take those 2 away, we're actually probably round about mid-table, really, in terms of the way we are. You almost look at those games as blips, don't you, in a weird way. Full credit to them. Another good defensive performance. Basically just need to start changing a couple of those 0-0 draws. We had 4 of them already this season into 1-0s and 2-0s, don't we, basically? Because the thing is if you keep a clean sheet, well, you're guaranteed at least a point.
It's half a battle, isn't it?
Exactly that. And in terms of that, Mark Howard, how vital is it to tie him down until the end of the season? I mean, didn't have a huge amount to do in this game, but he made 2 one big save just before we took the lead, and then another one deep into the second half as well to keep it at 2-0. I think we've got to get him tied down to the end of the season, surely.
I'll be honest, I'm worried, because it seems to have hit a bit of a...
The suggestion seems to be that we've been away and it's been a bit difficult to sit down and actually have talks, but I'd hope they just get something sorted. And I mean, if we don't get him tied down, then unless he's making outrageous demands, which I can't imagine he is, he's 36 and he didn't have a team until he joined us, and he's now first choice keeper pretty much. Then there's a big question about what's the point of David Holsworth being there if he can't sort out a deal. It should be as simple as that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've seen it before the other year when Sowerby and Addison and Yates were all here, and we were assured they would still be here, and they all left.
Yeah.
So a big couple of weeks regarding Howard. It'd be nice to get him to the end of the season, but...
It would indeed. I think that pretty much covers it in terms of talking about the thing. I've got another point about Jon Mellish, but we'll discuss that in the preview section. Let's take a quick break then now, Dan, and we'll be back with the preview section just after that. And we're back for part 2 of the Brunton Bugle, of course.
Hey. That second part could be right. We could be going up the Football League.
Right.
With this run of fixtures, you never know.
You never know indeed. So we're on to the preview section now. Just a reminder to everyone, you can subscribe to the podcast on all good podcast apps, over Acast, Google, Spotify, Cast or Apple Podcast. You can get them all on there and just click subscribe. And as soon as a new episode's out, it'll appear in your little inbox on the app. And obviously, if you can give us a review on anything of that, that'd be brilliant. I had a look the other day. I think we've got about 50 reviews on Apple Podcasts now, and I think it's an average about 4.9 out of 5.
Yeah.
So brilliant.
There's only one bad one, and let's just say we're a bit embarrassed for the person who did it because we know who you are.
Yes,
and we won't say any more than that.
Well, it's very easy to work out when you look at the other reviews they've done on there. So let's just say that.
That's none of our business.
Indeed. It's their choice. If that's their opinion, that's their opinion. It just happens that 99% of the other people disagree with them. So as well as that, you can follow us on social media at Brunton Bugle or search Brunton Bugle on Twitter and like our page. We're also on the Be Just and Fear Not group and on the Cumbrians.net message board as well. Second half of the show, as usual, it's sponsored by the Carlisle United Supporters Club London branch this season. The London branch is open to all Carlisle United fans. They've got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston, Singapore, and of course every part of London and the South East. Not heard anything about your challenge yet, Dan, about all 32 boroughs of London, but we'll drop a message to Simon and see if he can find that out for us. They regularly meet up on away trips as well as arranging many social events and supporters games and do fundraising for the club. They'll be providing us with information for the away games as part of their preview section this season too. You can find out more about London Branch at their website, carlisle-londonbranch.org. Right, Dan. First up, we've got the catching up with the opposition section, and this week we spoke to Bradford City fan Ben about how the Bantams are getting on this season. Some of the topics covered include how Derek Adams is faring in his first season at Valley Parade, why the Bantams are unable to sort of keep up with the expectations of their club, really, in terms of their excellent support. They don't really hit the heights you'd expect. And a bit about the ex-Blues and ex-Bantams in the two squads. So here's the chat I had with Ben earlier this week. Ben, thanks for giving up your time to speak to us about Bradford City today. Last 2 seasons since you dropped back down to League Two were a bit of a slog, I think it's fair to say, for the Bantams. But your expectations, well, at least among fans of other League Two clubs, certainly on our podcast, we predicted you to do well, were quite high in the summer after you brought in a new manager and some decent signings. So what's gone wrong so far? Why is it not quite clicked yet?
Yeah, it's kind of like a complete inverse of last season, because I think kind of last season we went into the season with a very threadbare squad, and I think we kind of expected maybe that we would struggle. Whereas this year we kind of, brought in a proven manager who'd had success in this league and has, got that on his resume that he got out with much, smaller clubs on much tighter budgets. And I think everybody really expected us to be comfortably within the top 6 or 7. And, we started well. We got a couple of good wins under our belts early on. We beat Mansfield away after we were 2-1 down. We came back and beat them. And, since then, all that kind of optimism just seemed to fade away. We've had some really frustrating kind of games. I mean, we've drawn 11 matches already this season, which has kind of been, our Achilles heel, that we just haven't turned, those tight games into wins where, 2 or 3 of those into wins and we'd be sitting on the edge of the playoffs, which is, kind of shows how close this league is, and, the fact that no team really seems to be really outstanding this season. Even, your Forest Greens, you look on Saturday, they went to Oldham and were bottom and couldn't beat them. So we really expected, big things under Derek Adams, and so far both he and the team just haven't delivered what we expected. But I think it's not just a case of the team aren't trying or the players are not maybe bought in to the project yet. I think it's more one, a bit of bad luck that we've had so many injuries to key players already this season. I think 2, the quality maybe isn't there. The recruitment has maybe let us down in terms of the players we've brought in, and not really players that are going to be pushing for promotion to League One or would be able to hold their own in League One. And I think 3, it's been a bit of a culture shock for Derek Adams, that he's kind of at a club that needs to play on the front foot, has high expectations, whereas maybe before he's been at clubs that have been the underdog and have kind of accepted that, look, we're not going to control the game, we're going to hit you on the counter attack, we're going to find ways to win the game. And I think that's maybe the difference with Bradford City compared to a Morecambe or a Ross County. No offence intended.
I suppose he's been at Plymouth as well, though, hasn't he? And he did pretty well there, although it didn't end that great, I think, from what I remember. But I suppose it's one of those ones he wants to prove himself at a big club again. What's his style of play been like so far? Has it been, because I know his Morecambe side were very well organised and very well drilled last season. Is it much of the same so far for you?
Yeah, so I think that obviously the thing with Derek is like it's his way or the highway. So he's not, he's not going to compromise on his style, and he's not going to compromise on the players and the staff he wants to bring in. And that's something that I think our ownership has had to kind of relinquish, because whereas before we've had maybe like a stronger control over the recruitment and things like that. So we actually had a head of recruitment who we brought in January this year, and he kind of oversaw the signings in January. And after this summer window, which Derek didn't seem impressed with the players we brought in, he's actually been sacked now already. He was sacked in September, so that kind of shows that Derek's gonna he's not afraid to say this person needs to go. I want to bring this person in, and I guess his style of play. We've kind of said already it's a really negative style of play. It's not your control possession, play on the front foot, play attacking up in football, which is kind of why he's got his critics. Not just from his, he's kind of outspoken out, bully boy behaviour, which kind of does come through. But then again, he's a very, he is a very intelligent, composed man, and I think, his style of plays. You'll probably see on Saturday, Carlisle will control the game, but what he likes is to convert his chances into goals, and that's where it's kind of hit a wall with us, because the players that we have maybe don't have the quality to take that one or two chances to make sure that you come away with a 1-0 win or a 2-1 win, and because we have one of the highest XG ratings in the league, and we create some incredible chances every game, 20, 30 chances, but we're just not converting them into goals because of the players that we have at his disposal at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of those players. This is probably going to take a little bit, because looking at both sides, the players who play for both clubs, there's 8 in total across the two squads, which is quite incredible, really. Let's talk about the ex-Blues in the Bradford squad first. There's 3 there. Andy Cook, obviously, didn't play too much didn't actually play a first-team game for us, actually, because he was first-year pro, never quite made it. Alex Gilliard had a decent loan spell with us from Newcastle, and Elliot Watt, again, a loan spell from Wolves. I mean, how are those 3 getting on for you guys?
Cook is obviously like the main striker as it was, but he's had a lot of injury problems, and he won't be playing on Saturday because he's out. Gilliard's back for his second spell. He was a bit disappointing in his first spell. He showed really good promising signs, especially as a kind of a young player. They brought him back in now. Now he's had his time at Scunthorpe, and he seems to become more well-rounded there, and more of like had more of an experienced head on his shoulders. But again, he's not really. He in the last couple of games, he's started to come into his own. He's started to have a bigger impact on games. But the thing with Gilliard is he doesn't really get many goals and assists, which I guess is kind of the main the main thing you're looking for, especially from a winger.
Yeah.
And then Elliot Watt, he's a real Marmite player. Some people really like him. Some people think that he shouldn't be in the team. He's very much a Hollywood footballer. He likes to play these outlandish passes. The big crossfield balls. But he doesn't really like to do the dirty work in defence. He's happy just to take a foul, take a yellow card. So he's very much chalk and cheese, Elliot Watt. Some games he can really run the show and dominate the midfield, where some games can kind of get accused of going missing and just not wanting to put the hard yards in for the team.
Yeah, Elliot Watt's an unusual one for us because we only had him for maybe the 2 or 3 months before obviously COVID kicked in, so we only got to see him for a short spell, and he was excellent in that short spell for us, so we probably never got to saw the other side of it. With Gilliard, he was always one of those players who I always thought he's got the ability, but has he got the fight there? He does. The amount of times he'd fanny out of a challenge, and you'd think just all you have to do is put a foot in. It's not gonna hurt you. And Cookie's one of those ones. It's I suppose there's a slight tinge of regret amongst our fans that he never really got a chance because he came through round about the same time as Gary Medine, and Medine looks streets ahead of him. I mean, I think
the most frustrating thing with Cook for us is that he's not really had a strike partner up there with him. No. Whereas where he's played at other clubs like maybe Tranmere, he's had a Norwood alongside him who's really helped take the pressure off him, because when he's been playing with us, he's been playing mainly as a lone striker, and he really had to take the brunt of the work. He's had to play as almost a target man and poach a goal scorer at the same time. So for what he's been asked to do, and I think he almost has a a 1 in 2, 1 in 3 goal ratio. So his actual stats are pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's one of those players. If you give him enough chances and you give him the service, he'll turn it into goal. So for us, Cookie's been brilliant. He's kind of answered a lot of critics who said, "Oh, maybe he's too old, or maybe he's coming to the end of his career." He still looks like he's up for the fight, and without his goals this season, we'd be nowhere even near the top half. So yeah, he's a big loss for us at the minute. Both him and Charles Vernon, they're kind of our two key men who are going to get us goals. So yeah, without them, we seem to hit a bit of a struggle at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's move on to the United squad then, because there's a fair few ex-Bantams in there. I mean, there was even more last season. Yeah. I seem to think that there was a long-running joke last season that the only DVD that Chris Beach owned was a Bradford City reserves highlights from 2018 to 2020 or something like that.
From Guiseley away, yeah, because he was scouting at Guiseley away in pre-season, and some of our fans picked up that he seemed to only be signing players that he'd watched in that game. So, given some of the signings you've made, it might not be too far.
Yeah, because Amari Patrick, there was a picture of him, and you can see Beach in the background in the crowd on it. It's a bizarre one.
Yeah,
he's gone now. So, I mean, let's go through them. I'll list them for you. Danny Devine, Callum Guy, also in a loan spell, you guys. Joe Riley, Kelvin Mellor, and Jordan Gibson. There's your five. What's your sort of memories of them at Bradford?
Well, most of them kind of play. They came through under our former chairman, who is one half of like the German duo. So we still have one that's in charge, who's kind of like the money man, who doesn't really have any interest in football. Whereas the other guy was kind of heavily involved. He wanted to run the team. He wanted to pick the players. He appointed an under-18 manager that he could basically control and basically influence him on the signings. So these were players who came in a really difficult time, and so Joe Riley had a long injury. He never really got to see I think he did his crucial ligament or knee injury, so we never really got to see the best of him. But when he had his couple of opportunities, he looked quite promising.
Well, he played at fullback obviously for you guys, didn't he? Because that's where he started at Man United. Back. But for us, he's almost exclusively played in centre midfield. He's played a bit of right back this season, actually, as cover. But mostly played in midfield for us. It's interesting that he, Beach spotted that and decided to move him into that position. Yeah,
he never played there for us. Obviously, centre midfield, we did have Danny Devine for a while, and I think, Bradford fans especially have huge respect for Danny. He's one of our own. He's a Bradford lad. He came through the academy. He always said like how proud he was to represent the club and play for the club. So, it'd be good to see him again this weekend. He was one that really, under McCall at the start of, it was the 18-19 season or 17-18 season, he really got a run in the team, and he seemed to be nailing down a position. But then, when results kind of went bad, he kind of became the scapegoat as, as a young lad, let's get a more experienced player in to replace him. And he just never seemed to be settled in the side. And it's good that he's managed to go out and get an opportunity to play football. Callum Guy as well, another one who came in on loan, and he didn't really make a huge impact. You could see kind of signs of quality from him, but never really never really looked like he was going to get a permanent contract, or like he was really pushing to be
certainly not the levels that we showed last season, at least, anyway.
No, see, like last season with Mellish, he seemed to really strike a partnership and be like one of the top players in the league, which is kind of typical from players when they leave Bradford City. They almost seem to go on to other clubs in this league and have real success and become one of the top players. Like we've lost, Matty Dolan's gone to Newport. I think he's one of the best midfielders in this league at the moment. Tim Dieng went to Exeter, another one who's absolutely thriving at Exeter and looks a completely different player. So we weren't too surprised to see Callum Guy, Amari Patrick, those kind of players go to Carlisle and succeeding. But obviously from what you've been saying, he's purple patch has kind of died out a bit, and he's not doing as well this season.
And obviously the last two, Kelvin Mellor and Jordan Gibson. I think you mentioned that Gibson didn't have the best of spells of you, did he?
Yeah, two players that might not get as good a reception on Saturday. Kelvin, is a top professional, and I think you can never say he didn't give 100% for the club, but for us, he just seemed to completely lack any sort of ability. We had a running joke that the only reason he's in the team is because he has a long throw. used to completely abuse the fact that he had. I don't know if you guys use it.
We've never used it once. It's weird because last season you probably remember that we used to just launch it into the box with Coyote every chance we got because he had a monster of a throw in him. But this season, Beach sort of quietly dropped it towards the start of the season, and Keith Millen just hasn't bothered since he's come in because we haven't got any big players anymore. That's the problem. So
you'll see on Saturday that we still insist on using a long, not long throw that's just completely aimless and is actually aimed towards Alex Gilead to flick on. So you'll have a good laugh at that because he can't actually win a header. So pretty interesting tactic that seemed to begin under the Kelvin Mellor era. He just used to launch it aimlessly into the box and never actually resulted in a goal. But yeah, he had some really, really difficult games. Boyer seemed to really like him, Gary Boyer, when he was our manager, and kind of took him as like a leader in the dressing room. But I don't really think he accepted that role much. And yeah, he really got some stick towards the end of Boyer's reign. And then once McCall came back in, I think Mellor completely got left out of the team and actually brought in a young lad, an 18-year-old who was again from our academy, Finn Cousin Dawson, who's now internationally. He kind of just took over, and then Mellor left for Morecambe, I think it was. He went and played under Derek Adams.
Yeah, ironic that.
But Derek will know it. And then who's the other one?
Jordan Gibson.
Jordan Gibson, yeah. Yeah, he's a complete enigma. Played in a pre-season friendly against Sunderland while he was on trial with us. And he actually kissed the badge in front of the cop when he scored. So from that moment, he became a bit of a strange player because it's not really something you'd expect to see in a pre-season friendly from a trialist.
No, certainly not.
But yeah, he's one of those. He showed incredible signs of potential, and he looked like a really talented, skillful player. But never in games seemed to. First of all, he never really got a chance in his first season when he actually signed a short contract. But then when he got given the chance, a lot of people questioned his attitude on the pitch. He looks very much, unreliable. Didn't seem to work for the team. Tried a lot of skills. Again, another like Hollywood YouTube player who maybe thought he was better than he actually was. But to be fair to the kid, he seemed to just knuckle down. He went over to Ireland. Got a bit more experience of professional football and seems to have come back to Carlisle and hit the ground running, which is good. A lot of Bradford fans remember him for his dad, who was on Twitter. He's really outspoken about him. It was almost like the Devante Andy Cole situation that we'd had a couple of years before, where his dad was really bigging him up and saying, this guy's too good for this club. He should be playing at a higher level, and why is he not playing all this? So that kind of left a sour taste in some fans' mouths and kind of made him a bit of an outcast amongst the support because they just didn't really get his whole like attitude and demeanour. So yeah, but look, it wouldn't surprise me because we have a terrible run with ex-players coming back and scoring against us. So I fully expect to see him on the score sheet on Saturday. And with the way he's been scoring at the moment, I'd almost put my house on him getting a goal this weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mention about him doing all the skills and things like that, because it's one thing we've picked up on our pod is that sometimes he just tries a bit too hard to be the one who makes something happen, and sometimes you think just play a simple ball and then do your bits further up the pitch. It's frustrating, but you're right. I think going to Ireland seems to have toughened him up a little bit, at least as well, because he seems to cope quite well with the physical side since he's arrived with us. I think that's pretty much it, Ben. Thanks for your time. Before you finish, do you want to give us a prediction for this weekend's game? We always like to ask the opposition for a prediction. Quite often they don't want to give one. But, if you want to give one, that'd be great.
Well, I've been to Brunton Park I've been personally 4 times. I've never seen a score there, so you're already off to a good start. It'd be pretty much impossible not to predict a draw because, like I say, I think 9 of his last 11 games have been draws. Given what we watched 2 years ago when we last obviously came up with some away support, which was on a cold, miserable December afternoon, which I'm predicting could be quite similar to what we see this Saturday. I think I'll go for another 0-0 again. A lot of depression, a lot of kind of misery in the air. But yeah, I think it'd be a pretty hard fought game, and probably one goal nicks it either way if it's not going to be a all draw.
Cheers, Ben. Thanks for your time.
No worries, mate. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks once again to Ben for giving up his time to speak to us. Interesting little chat there. Interesting to see, they're sort of faltering Bradford, aren't they? Really? They're not being poor. They're drawing a lot of games, but they're just not getting those wins at the moment. You almost look at Bolton last season, don't you, and think it might just click for them second half of the season. And, if they can sort out a few of their injury issues, they'll probably start pulling up the table, I think. Referee for this weekend, it's Andy Haynes. It's his 15th season as an EFL referee. It's one of the names you always see, don't you, on the programs you recognise. Usually takes charge of 3 or 4 of our games a season. He's actually taken charge of 19 games so far this season, having got 50 bookings and no red cards yet. He last took charge of United for the 2-1 home defeat to Cheltenham Town last season, where no players were booked. Classic clash. Difficult one, this one. You know what?
It's not a classic.
Classic in one sense. It's a match from the archives. I should probably rename this section, shouldn't I? Because it's a big defeat this week. Because the thing is, we haven't actually played them that often. Because they've generally been in a higher division than us, or when we were in the higher divisions, they dropped down quite a bit. So it's kind of a weird one. We sort of passed each other on the way a lot of the time. But yeah, I've basically gone back to August 2013. Bradford City 4, Carlisle United 0. I think this is only fair considering what I did to the Shrewsbury fans last week. It's 8 years on. You can sort of look at this, Dan, can't you? It's sort of a big turning point in United's history, or recent history at the very least. The budget was massively cut at the start of the season, wasn't it? You could tell that with the recruitments we made. I mean, Lewis Guy was a marquee signing, for crying out loud, which tells you all you needed to know. And it's sort of a, you can almost look at it as leading to the ongoing malaise that sort of leaves us floundering in EFL. Never mind, struggling to stay in the EFL even. Not even trying to get out of League 2 to League 1. That's the feeling I get when you look back at this game, don't you? Did you go to this one?
No, and I'm glad I never.
It was generally just awful. And I mean, Pat Bruff was playing at left back this day, and he was probably one of our better players. And Greg Abbott actually subbed him off, I think, with 20 minutes to go. And it wasn't a case he played badly. He was like, you don't deserve to be on the end of the game when it's going this badly, really. I mean, we'd lost on the opening day 5-1 to Leyton Orient. You could probably put that down as sort of a late collapse, having played a good 60 minutes with just 10 men, because I think it was 2-1 until about 10 minutes to go in that game. But I mean, this one was just a shambles from start to finish. It could have been 8 or 9. If you watch the highlights back on the club's YouTube, there actually isn't a single Carlisle United chance on those highlights. And that's an accurate reflection of the day. That's how bad it was. They could have been 3-up early on due to defensive mistakes before Mark Yates gave them a lead on 25 minutes. He cut in from the left and smashed an unstoppable right foot shot into the top corner from 25 yards. Nothing they could have done about this goal. It was a brilliant goal, fair play. But then they doubled their lead on 25 minutes when Paul Furwell, he slotted in as centre-back this day, despite the fact that Mike Edwards was on the bench, which shows you how badly that signing of Edwards went when he couldn't even get in the team over a midfielder. I mean, Furwell tried to head it back to Gillespie, didn't put enough on it. Gillespie actually did well not to give away a penalty and forced Naki Wells wide. But Wells does brilliantly to just sort of chip the ball over Gillespie and into the empty net, really. It's a really, really good finish when you look back at it. And the game was dead buried in 29 minutes when a scoop ball forward at the top saw James Hansen, that is face up to Danny Livesey, and he slipped. Allowed the striker run on goal, and then he just fired into the bottom corner. Didn't give Gillespie a chance for that either. Two smart saves from Gillespie kept the score to 3 until substitute Kevin Feely, God, there's a name from the past, made an almighty cock up on his debut. He basically passed it straight to Naki Wells. He was away on the right, and he played it over to Gary Jones, who was never going to miss from the penalty spot with just Gillespie to beat. 4-0. I mean, it could have been 5 late on. Gillespie made a decent save, and Livesey followed with a block. But I mean, it's fair to say, I've never wanted a final whistle more in a long time than that game. It's basically a game, you look back, it's emblematic of the ongoing issues at the top of Brunton Park that continue to haunt the efforts to progress as a club, don't they? And I think that sums it up quite perfectly. I mean, looking at the team, it's just a mess, isn't it? Really, you got Bruff at left back, Potts playing at right back still back then. Paul Black came on as a sub for Pat Bruff, who we signed on loan from Mansfield Town.
Black, Lynch and Feely. What a set of subs.
Yeah. And that was Jack Lynch's own appearance for the club.
Yeah.
Very feel for the lad in that sense. But yeah, and even the bench, the remaining subs were Greg Fleming, Alex Salmon, Mike Edwards and David Simonson.
Yeah.
Desperate, really, wasn't it, back then?
Anyways.
Let's move on to the play for both section. Dan, this is your section, your chance to tell us about one player who's played for both clubs.
Right, I've picked a player he's 50-year-old now, and he was born in Lutterworth in Leicestershire, but he started his career at Manchester City, and he actually played a few games for Manchester City. It is David Brightwell.
I thought it was. I was looking through the list there and trying to work out which one it was. And I was like,
no, he played quite a few games for Man City. Not as, his brother Ian played a few more type thing, but towards the end of his time, he started going out on loan. He had an early loan at Chester when he was a boy. Then he went to Lincoln and Stoke, and he went to Bradford on loan, and he ultimately signed for them. But he only made about 23, 25 appearances in a couple of years, and he himself went to Blackpool on loan for a couple of games. Then he moved to Northampton for the season, did all right. Then he moved to us for 2 years. And he's always sort of the forgotten man of the Jimmy Glass game, isn't he? Because he scored the equaliser. It was actually a bloody good goal.
Well, you know what people forget about that season as well is, I think we had something like the third or fourth best defence in the third division that season. We had a really good defence.
We just couldn't score goals.
No, that was the problem, yeah.
Yeah, but no, he had a good couple of years with us. And in fact, when he left us, he went to Hull City for a year. And then he had another year at Darlington. And, he's a little... He's a fireman now, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm sure I remember. There's an article somewhere online if you look him up.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realise is he's the son of Olympic gold medalist Anne Packer.
Oh, is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and 400 metre runner Robbie Brightwell. They obviously met when they were on the running scene back in the day. Oh. And as I mentioned, his brother Ian had a fantastic career at Man City. Played about 400 games, including cups, I think. So, that's they played for both this week. David Brightwell.
Brilliant. Right, I'm going to bash through these really quickly because we've already done quite
It's a big list.
It's a big list, as you'd expect. So, obviously, Greg Abbott managed both clubs, technically.
It's a big list because Chris Beach signed half of them.
It's true, yeah. It's true. You joke, but yeah. So, obviously, Greg Abbott, as I mentioned, he managed both clubs because he had a brief caretaker spell at Bradford, but he's best known for being a bit of a Bradford legend, isn't he, for his appearances in the 80s. Paul Anderson, he had a spell there at Bradford City. Tommy Barkas, I think he's going right back in the day for that name. Tommy Black, he's one we mentioned the other week, wasn't he, I think, as well, on another one. Another blast from the past. Mark Bridge Wilkins at that time there. Brightwell, you've obviously mentioned already. Reece Brown, George Birkinshaw, Danny Cadamarteri. I think he's probably better known for his time at Bradford than he is with us, I think it's fair to say.
I always said Danny Cadamarteri would have been nowhere near Brunton Park.
Oh, of course he wouldn't, but there you go. Andy Cook, obviously he's still playing for them now. Mark Cullen, he spent time there. Alan Davis is an interesting one. One maybe we'll cover on another episode sometime in the future because his story is quite a sad story, but it's a very interesting one. Danny Devine, Jamie Devitt, Scott Doby had a brief loan spell there. Was it from us, actually? In fact, it might have even been towards the end of his time with us. Possibly. Definitely had a spell there anyway. Fred Emery, I think he managed Bradford possibly, hasn't he? I can't remember I think he managed us, didn't he? Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly.
Sorry, I've just Googled it while you're talking. Doby's loan spell at Bradford was while he was at St Johnstone.
Ah, well, there you go. Dean Furman, obviously, probably better known for his time at Bradford as well. Jordan Gibson, Alex Gilliard. Matty Glennon, he spent some time there. Les Gore, Callum Guy, Stan Harland, Darren Holloway, Mickey Holmes, Jason Kennedy. I think we signed him from Bradford, didn't we, Jason Kennedy? I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head. Where am I at? Jason Kennedy, Nathaniel Knight Percival, Richard Liebert. His story is an interesting one as well.
Yeah,
we always picked him, but we thought it's probably not appropriate to talk about what he got up to. I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Gary Liddell, Peter McConnell, Kelvin Miller, sorry, I've misspelled that again. Josh Morris, Eric Nixon. I was surprised you didn't pick Eric Nixon, actually, because
he was on the short list.
Yeah, because obviously the story with him is the fact that he played in all 4 divisions in one season, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's the last person to do it, probably one of the only people to have done that.
Yeah,
back when you could do loan spell. Well, you probably could.
Well, sorry, goalkeepers can't they? Because it's emergency.
Indeed. Eric Nixon, Les O'Neill, Ben Parker, Amari Patrick, Billy Painter, Jordan Pickford, Lenny Pidgley, Ivor Powell, Jason Price, once again, just doing very good role on him. He's probably played for them. Jamie Proctor, another one he's played for everybody. Mark Prudo, again, another one he's played for loads and loads of clubs. Ben Richards, Everton. Joe Riley, Wes Saunders. I thought you might have picked him as well, actually, because he's a bit of
I very, very nearly did. Yeah.
Stephen Schumacher, obviously we mentioned last week, now Plymouth Argyle manager.
Plymouth manager.
Ronnie Warwick, again, there's some stories about him. What a player, though. What a great player, though. Naki Wells, Fred Westgarth, Ben Williams. Tommy Wright played for Bradford, but he didn't obviously play for us, but he coached us and caretaker managed us for a short while.
Can't do much more than coaching now, can he?
No, certainly can't. Charlie Wyke and Francois Zerka. There's a couple of decent ones to end on, isn't there? Right, well, let's get into the preview section, the sort of now and then sort of Bradford preview bit. Played them 54 times in our history, 19 wins, 14 draws and 21 defeats. There's a strong argument that they're probably the biggest club in League Two, isn't there? And considering they played in the Premier League, just over 20 years ago now, I think it was. They've been in a League Cup final not that long ago as well. You forget that. They get huge support, but they find it quite tough back in League Two over the last two seasons, haven't they? They haven't really hit the heights you'd expect and finished 9th in the first campaign back in, which was obviously interrupted by COVID, and then 15th last season, having at one point been in danger of relegation to the National League, wasn't there? There was a real worry for them. Around about when we played them, actually, wasn't it? I think I seem to remember. They really struggled at that point.
Yeah. Sorry, just as we were talking there, the club have announced that we've got a further 350 tickets for Salford.
Well, there you go. Live news on a podcast. Not much used to be. Well,
I was going to say, when it comes out on Friday morning, they're probably all sold out again, but just to show that we're on the ball, you know.
Indeed. They've got some injury and suspension issues at the moment going into this game. Andy Cook's going to miss out, as is Scott Vernon and Isa, who they signed from Scunthorpe not long back. I mean, he's a player who, big things were expected of in the past, wasn't there? But apparently he's out for the season. It's a big blow for them. And their captain, Niall Canavan, he's also suspended for the game. So quite a few big players are not available for this match. And I think in recent years, in terms of management, they've relied on a club legend as a boss that didn't really work out. And then 2 youth team coaches last season, which we did say at the time, the long-term contract for them was a bit of a surprise and a bit of a... I'm not sure why they're doing that. They obviously realised quite quickly it wasn't going to work, and they brought in Derek Adams in the summer, didn't they, Dan?
Yeah. People thought it was a bit crazy to leave Morecambe, having took them up, but I think from him it'll have been 2 things. One, there's only so far you can take Morecambe.
Yeah.
Considering 21st in the league at the moment. And 2, Bradford, as we say, are the biggest club in the league, and they've got the setup to go with it. So, no doubt pay better.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a sluggish first few months for them in West Yorkshire. I mean, as you mentioned, they previously won promotion with the Shrimps and Plymouth Argyle, but I think the Bantams represent a bit more of a task like Argyle than Morecambe, don't they? Really, I think it's fair to say. Similar sort of standing in terms of clubs. Just finding it tough to find the right form and get those wins at the moment. That's the problem. In terms of star man, I was going to pick Andy Cook, but obviously he's not available. So Ben kindly recommended that I pick Levi Sutton. He's a bit surprised that he picked this one, but he's a former Scunthorpe United midfielder. He found a tough first season at Valley Parade, but in this campaign he's established himself as a first-team regularly in that sort of holding, sort of defensive midfield role. And I think he's a key part in how they play and the fact that they generally keep it very tight at the back so far. Looking through the squad, Dan, any key members you'd pick out? I mean, I've picked out Elliot Watt as an obvious one, and
Gilead and Watt are the obvious ones, given the connections. We know what we can do, but like you say, the injuries they have, especially up front, could work well for us.
And obviously Liam Rydhall as well. He's been at quite a few clubs at this level, hasn't he, and done really well in the past. So he's a decent signing. Current form wise, they actually sit 18th in the last 6 games League Two form table. We're now up to 15th. That win has really pushed us up, because we were basically bumbling about 21st, 23rd, 24th basically, and now we've moved right back up, and another win would really push us right up the table. Their current record is, I think, drawn, lost, drawn. And I think they've drawn something like 9 out of their last 11 games. So you can tell by their issues, they just can't finish teams off. That's the problem they've got.
And that's, with strikers injured, that's no surprise, is it?
Yeah, not a surprise at all, really, is it? Let's cover United then, Dan. Callum Guy featured against Stevenage, which was a big boost because there was a concern he was going to miss that because of the knock he picked up against Mansfield. Looks like he's got through that with no problem. So at the moment, injury-wise, we're looking not too bad other than the existing ones. I mean, Zach Clough, Gimme Toure, Joe Riley, Lewis Alessandra, Lucas Jensen and Josh Dixon are the ones who remain not injured. I don't think there's any others I've missed out there, is there?
Off the top of my head, no.
I think that's all that's out injured at the moment. So, what do you do? Do you stick with the 11 that started against Stevenage? Maybe switch out Fishburn for one of Young or Abrams? Do you persist with Jon Mellish up front?
They always say don't change a winning team, and I think it would be unfair on the 11 that started last week if we did, to be quite honest.
I could understand why you might want to take Fishburn out. You might just want to drop him in and out of the team a little bit at the moment, just keep him fresh and keep him, not put too much on him and expect him to play every game, because he played the full 90 against Stevenage, didn't he? And that'll be a tough physical battle against them. But I would like to see him start this one. I think maybe over the Christmas break you could look to put him on the bench for one of those games to give him a little bit of a rest. But
yeah.
I think with a week's break, I think it's worth having another look at him and
definitely.
What he does. And with any luck, he'll finally get the goal that we're hoping he would get finally for us.
He deserves one, doesn't he?
Oh, he does, absolutely. So let's do predictions then, Dan. You're up first. What are you going to go for?
A nice solid 2-0 win with goals from Jordan Gibson and the Fish.
He's going to get that goal eventually, isn't he? And
he's going to get it in the 87th minute and then get booked for ripping his shirt off.
Well, I'm going to go for more or less the same. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win, but I'm not going to go for... I'm going to go for Danny Devine to get his first goal for the club and Sam Fishburn to get the other as well. That's the prediction I'm going for that. Now, Mike's just sent me over his prediction, so I don't know what it is yet. So let's hear what Mike's got to say for this one.
I'm feeling confident, so I'm going to go for another 2-0 win, and I think the Fish is finally going to get his goal, and you wait ages for one, and two come along at once, so he's going to get a brace.
Ooh, nice and confident. A brace for the Fish. There you go. That's the match predictions of the way. So there's not really much jeopardy there. Just basically, who's going to score?
We've all said 2-0.
We've all backed Sam Fishburn to score at least one. So it's whether he can score the goal, basically. Right. Well, that's that section done, Dan. So just the X-Files next. It's a very short X-Files section this week, isn't it?
Yeah. I was at home on Saturday because I had to go and do a PCR test because I was a close contact to someone. So I watched all the scores come in, and it came back negative, by the way. And there was very, very little. It was probably the quietest we've had. The only one in the proper leagues, Hallam Hope scored in the balmy 5-5 Oldham Forest Green game.
I mean, this was mad, wasn't it? Just goals keeps going in all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those ones Forest Green are looking at and think, that's just a freak result. Don't worry about it. Let's move on. Oldham are looking at it. Great to get a point.
Yeah, we've got 4 more, and they were all in National League North, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Michael Liddell scored for Blythe in a 2-1 defeat to Southport.
Yeah.
Kedwin Scott and Adam Campbell scored in Gateshead's 4-3 win at Farsley Celtic.
I think Campbell's was a 90th minute win as well. They're going really well, really good guns this season, aren't they, Gateshead?
And former keeper Lewis Gray scored an own goal in Chester's 4-2 defeat at Spennymoor.
So not the greatest of starts for Danny Livesey as caretaker there, is it, so far, I don't think?
No.
In terms of the other news, there's one I've missed off here, Dan, but I'm sure you'll remember what it is, so let's go through them.
We've got Jared Branthwaite to sign a new contract at Everton.
Yep.
3.5-year deal with the option of a further year. And I think they're possibly looking to loan him out again in January, just to get him the regular football, because he's classed as first team now. He doesn't really play for the under-23s. So, a loan, you would imagine a top-end championship team they would want.
Yeah.
And Gary Liddell was named in the EFL League 2 Team of the Week.
Yep. And the other one, of course, is the news that broke, I think it was early today or yesterday, about Danny Granger, who's left his role at Falkirk, hasn't he?
Yes, Danny Granger has left Falkirk, which they've just appointed a new manager, so it's not really a massive surprise, that one.
Yeah, not really surprised that, but I'm sure Danny won't be out of work for very long. There'll be plenty of suitors for him, I imagine. And there you have it. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks once again to our sponsors, the London branch. Thanks once again to everyone for listening. There's no new places on the world map of listeners. I've been checking it for a while, and we seem to be a bit settled at the moment. And I don't think people are travelling as much, which probably doesn't help us with those things. In terms of upcoming episodes, next week, obviously we mentioned we'll do that one in the new year when we've got that free week after this Scunthorpe game. But over Christmas, we're looking at how we're going to fit this in, and I think what we're going to do is, at the very least, we're going to do a double header for the Rochdale and Salford games. In terms of what we do for the Scunthorpe game, whether we actually even do preview that, I'm not sure, because it's going to be very tight to fit it in. I think it's fair to say, especially after the Salford game. We might just record something at the Salford game, possibly. We never know. We might just do something there and put that one out, possibly. But we'll have to wait and see what we do with that when we're done. So it's going to be a double header next week of previews.
I think a triple header would probably be better, to be honest, just with time constraints.
We might cover a little bit on Scunthorpe, but it probably won't be as detailed as Rochdale and Salford. So we'll see what we can do with it.
I've just had a look as well on the bet builder on Bet365. Carlisle to win with the Fish scoring any time is 6-1.
Oof. Maybe put a couple of pennies on that, maybe bring in a bit of money in, but you never know. But yeah, we're not gamble responsibly. We've got to always say that.
Yeah.
Right? There you go. That's it then for this week, Dan. Thanks once again for joining me. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back sometime next week of our little Christmas double-header special. So thanks once again, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.